Let me guess. You're an international student currently going through high school or a gap year, dealing with these long and complicated uni applications, and you're about to apply to University of Stirling, but you still have a few questions in mind. Perhaps you're wondering, what's the weather like? How do you actually travel to Stirling? How do you open a bank account? Is the last book of Game of Thrones ever going to come out? I'm still waiting, George. Well, keep watching, for I, Matthew, your humble servitor, have all the answers to these questions, and much, much more.
Cringe.
Who said that? So let's jump straight into it. First things first, we need to talk about the weather. The Scottish weather. Rain, wind, clouds, mud. This is the sort of preconceived cliche that we have of the weather generally found in the UK, this cold, sad environment, but the truth is somewhat different from what you'd expect. Now, don't expect Hawaiian beaches and a hot summer all year round, especially since the winters do get quite cold, so remember to bring warm clothes with you. Really, the best way to describe the weather in Stirling is like this. Raindrops in the morning, sunshine 30 minutes later, clouds, and all over again. And when I say rain, I really mean a few droplets. Personally, I've never experienced the torrential pouring that we see in movies. Fingers crossed. Nevertheless, I definitely suggest that you pack with you some outdoor clothes, like a waterproof jacket and good walking shoes, or buy them once you've arrived, as one of the great things about Stirling is the amazing landscapes you'll have the chance to discover. Like the hills of Damayet right next to campus, or the Abbey Crag where Wallace Monument is located, both of which offer great spots for morning walks. And yes, as you can see, I'm a total badass. This is also one of the main concerns for people wanting to study in Scotland. Will I understand the accent? And it's a pretty legitimate question. I mean, if you can't comprehend what people are saying, how are you going to socialize with other people or understand the teachers? But really, the accent isn't that difficult to understand, and honestly, if I could understand it, so can you. Generally speaking, most people in Stirling won't have a thick accent anyways, but even if they do, it's not a big deal. You can just kindly ask them to repeat what they said and tell them that, well, you're not from around here. Besides, Scottish people are usually very friendly and helpful, so don't hesitate to ask for help. Also, remember that Stirling is a global community with over 20% of its students coming from overseas, so you're definitely not alone in this situation. In the end, we all have our own accents, so keep in mind that the person you're talking to might have the same difficulty understanding you as you do them. It's all about finding a common ground. You might have noticed that I myself have a bit of a weird English pronunciation, so I'd be curious if you're able to guess where I'm from in the comments down below. Okay, so you've decided to come to Stirling, but now, how do you get there? The most straightforward plan is to travel through plane, but you need to know beforehand that Stirling doesn't have its own airport. It does, however, have a train station from which you can then travel to or from the neighboring cities. What's great about this is that Stirling is located right next to Edinburgh and Glasgow, so you can have a direct access to both airports and train stations from either city. Say for instance you've taken your flight to Edinburgh Airport, you will then need to take the Airlink 100 Express bus, which comes every 30 minutes, so don't worry if you've missed it, in order to arrive to the Waverley train station and then take your train directly to Stirling in less than an hour. Now, it's preferable that you do this beforehand on the Trainline app or the ScotRail website, so you can better schedule your trip in advance. But if this sounds too complicated and you'd rather pay a bit more just to simplify things down, you can always order a Stirling taxi that you can get directly from the airport of either Edinburgh or Glasgow to the Stirling accommodation of your choice, which is arguably a very convenient option. So far we've talked about the fun stuff, but now we need to address the paperwork. I know. These things can get very boring and tedious, but it's absolutely necessary to get them done, and that's especially true for opening a bank account. Although your home bank may have the possibility of being used abroad, it's always a good idea to open a UK bank account for several reasons. First, you need to consider the currency conversion fees that you'll be charged with each time you make a payment or withdraw some cash, and these can very quickly make you lose lots of money. Also, if you ever have a job or are planning to move to uni accommodation, you will most certainly be asked to utilize a UK bank account. In Stirling itself, you have a wide array of choices from HSBC to Barclays, although most students prefer Santander as it has an ATM machine directly on campus. In order to open a UK bank account, you'll generally need a few documents. These may include a passport, a valid visa, a proof of address in the UK, your university accommodation if that's where you'll be living, And finally, an acceptance letter from either UCAS or the university. Depending on the bank, you may have the possibility of setting up your account online from overseas, which may facilitate the process once you arrive in Stirling. Still on the subject of money, as international students, it's really important to consider all the expenses that you're going to make throughout your studies and what sort of things you should be aware of to cut down on the costs. For instance, you'll most likely travel around Scotland, if not the UK, by train, especially if you want to visit Edinburgh and Glasgow, both of which are vibrant and bustling hubs for students. In that regard, it's always a good long-term purchase to consider taking the 1625 rail card, which offers a third off your train fares and costs only £70 for 3 years. If you ever decide to move to a private flat in year 2 or even as you arrive in year 1, keep in mind that the bills can quickly add up to large sums of money. Just the water bill itself can represent several hundreds of pounds, yet, thankfully, full-time university students can receive an exemption that enables us not to pay any council tax at all. However, this isn't automatic, so make sure to fill in the exemption form on the Stirling Council website beforehand. And that was the top things international students should know before coming to Stirling. If you have any other questions, go check out the University of Stirling websites or the social medias for all the answers you'll ever need. Don't forget to like and share the video if you found it useful, and I guess I'll see you at Stirling. Peace!